is a lot more than you think it is. It's a lot more than you think it is. In fact, I think if I was you, one of the things I would do is spend a lot of time in Genesis. If you have your Bibles, you can open up to Genesis 37. We're going to kind of just run through Genesis 37 through 50 because there are a lot of great people in the Bible, a lot of great men and women in the Bible that we can use as examples, but there might not be one any greater than Joseph and the story of Joseph. Joseph, there's more written about him than Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. I mean, there is more in the Bible contributed to Joseph than almost anybody else, and it's for good reason. He was an incredible person. When you think about some of the other great characters, David and Solomon and Abraham, and those were great men of God, but there were serious flaws that they had, like all of us have. But Joseph, man, if you think about his life and what he did, it's such a powerful example. I just want to run through it quick. In Genesis 37, Joseph is a 17-year-old. And he really is not what he's going to become. In fact, he's just the opposite. I mean, he's the epitome of an arrogant young man. He was his father's favorite. And by the way, when you have kids, don't do this. Don't do what Jacob did. But Joseph was clearly his father's favorite. He had a favorite position in the family. And boy, it was his world. It was his world. And he let his brothers know that it was his world. And there was 12 kids. He was the 11th one, and it was destroying the family. His arrogance, his selfishness, his self-centeredness was single-handedly destroying that family. It got so bad, in fact, that when his brothers were out tending the sheep away from home, the dad wanted to know, Jacob, what was going on, so he sent Joseph out and said, just go out and find him, let me know that everything's okay, tell me how things are going. And so Joseph did go out, and the brothers saw him coming. And they said, you know what, it's time to take action here. We've had enough of this guy. You talk about brokenness. This is a broken situation. They want to murder their brother. Think about that. You all are in families, and you've had families situations that aren't as good as they should be, and you've gotten frustrated with each other. And sometimes marriages end up in divorce, but very seldom does somebody end up dead, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to kill him before his life had really even gotten started. The oldest brother talked him out of it and said, let's just throw him in a pit and leave him there. And he'll die of some other, but at least the blood won't be on our hands. And so they threw him in a pit. Reuben expected to go back later and take him out. But what happened was, as Reuben was away, a bunch of merchants came by. Merchants were traveling through there, and they had a better idea. Judah had a better idea. He said, you know what? Let's not let him die down there. So the blood won't be on our. Let's sell him. Let's make some money off him. And so, think about this. They sold their brother for 20 shekels of silver. It's we talk about selling that's going on in the world today with sex slavery and how broken our world is. I mean, it's always been going on. They didn't know what was going to happen. They sold him to this guy, and these guys were taking him to Egypt. He'd never been in Egypt. Egypt was a foreign land. He sold it. So these guys they take him to Egypt, and they sell him to a guy named Potiphar. Potiphar's a very powerful guy. Potiphar's a guy who was the chief security person for Pharaoh, who was the most powerful person in the world. So Joseph ends up in this situation where it's not his world anymore, right? It was his world when he was home. He was his dad's favorite, and everything that he wanted, he got, including this robe of many colors. But now he's in somebody else's place. He's on his own. It's not his world. It's amazing what happened. We don't get the details about it, but Joseph comes out of this experience of having been sold to slaves, been sold to Potiphar. He's now in somebody else's world that he doesn't understand, but he's starting to make a difference. He's starting to make a difference in this world. He must have been very talented. God was with him, like God is with all of you. When we hear that, we think, well, he was special. No, God was with him like he's with all of you, and he's given you talents like he gave David talents, or Joseph talents. And so Joseph starts to move up in the organization. In fact, he moves all the way up in the organization and becomes second in command in this foreign land. He's making a difference in somebody else's place. And they say that the people recognized that he was making a difference because of how close he was to God, because God's hand was on him. And so he's making a difference in a foreign land. Really practical lesson there. When you get out of college, don't worry about taking a job that you think is beneath you. Be proud of starting at the bottom. Most people who do great things in the world and make a difference start at the bottom. No job is really too small. Don't be afraid to do that. Well, what happens next? What happens next is Joseph's a young guy. Joseph's a good-looking guy. Potiphar's wife is not a very good lady, and he starts to pursue Joseph. He wants to have an affair with Joseph. This is so interesting, right? It's so interesting that this happens. It's amazing. I'm sure she was a beautiful woman, and I'm sure that it had to, and Joseph resists her. Joseph resists her over and over and over again. He did something that Solomon couldn't do. He did something that David couldn't do. He did something that Abraham couldn't do. He stayed pure, and he resisted her. She got so angry that eventually, when she's pursuing him, she grabs him. He runs. The coat comes off, and she makes up a lie. Joseph showed up. Joseph tried to force himself on me, and obviously Potiphar's not going to be happy with that, although he probably knows a little bit better because of knowing his wife, but he has no choice. He throws Joseph in jail. So through no count of his own, Joseph went from being a slave to up here, and he went from being then up here right back down to being a slave in jail. It's a very interesting story, but you know, a practical lesson here is when you start to make a difference, when you start to make a difference in your life, guess what's going to happen? The devil's going to come after you. He's going to come after you because he doesn't want you to make a difference, and he gets a lot of us. He gets a lot of us. He probably won't pay much attention to you if you're not a difference maker. But the minute you start to be a difference maker, he's going to come after you, just like he came after Joseph. So now he's in prison. It happens again. Joseph starts to get involved in the organization of the prison, and he starts to rise to the top again until he gets to be second in command again and given control over everything that was going on in the prison, he as a prisoner. It's amazing. Very talented guy. God's hand is on him, and he's making a difference in a foreign place that he knows nothing about. Very, very powerful lesson there. But you know what else is true about this? We've got a lot of victims in the world. We have a lot of victims in the church. What we need is not more victims. We need more difference makers. We don't need more victims. One of the things that's going to happen to you in your life is people are going to let you down. People are going to let you down. People are going to fail you. People will even lie about you. There's probably nothing worse than what could have happened to Joseph, because he was up here. She lies about him. He did what was right, and he ends up in jail. He ends up at the bottom again. But that didn't, I'm sure he was down about it, but he kept fighting back. He kept fighting back, and God was with him, and he gets raised to the top again. And then, so the prison warden put him in charge. He's not a victim. He's a difference maker. What happens next? Two guys that got thrown in jail by Pharaoh, the chief cupbearer and the baker. One guy's in charge of Pharaoh's food. The other guy's in charge of Pharaoh's drink. And if you were going to try to assassinate the Pharaoh, that's what you try to do. You try to get him by poisoning his food or drink, because these guys are very important. Pharaoh thinks that they've tried to assassinate him, that one of them's plotting against him, and so he throws him in jail. Well, Joseph's given control of these guys. And these guys both end up having dreams that bother them tremendously. And they don't know what the dreams mean. Obviously, they're very nervous. So Joseph interprets the dreams for both of them. And one of them, he said, you know what? You're going to be freed in 3 days. Congratulations. And the other one, he says, you know what? You're going to be killed in 3 days. Well, the one that was going to be freed in 3 days was very, very happy, very joyful. The next 3 days were going to go much better for him, because it was determined that he wasn't the one that was planning the assassination. And so Joseph said to him, remember me, please. Well, guess what happens? The guy forgets him. The guy forgets him. Joseph thinks that he now has a chance to get out of jail, but the guy completely forgets him. He goes on his way. He forgets that what Joseph's done for him. He's got 2 more years in jail. 2 more years in prison for something that he has not done. But he stays at the top of the prison organization. And 2 years later, Pharaoh has this dream. It's very bothersome to him. It has 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows, and the 7 skinny cows end up eating the 7 fat cows. Same with grains, stacks of grain. And the whole thing was bothering him. He had nobody that could interpret it, but he believed it was very meaningful. So they brought in Joseph, smart guy. He brought Joseph, and Joseph lays it all out for him. He said, this is what's going to happen. There's going to be 7 years of plenty. There's going to be rain. The crops are going to be abundant. Things are going to go well for us. But then there's going to be 7 years of famine. And those 7 years of famine are going to be devastating unless there's a plan. So the Pharaoh said, fine, put the plan together. So Joseph, with his leadership capability, using a very powerful imagination that God's given him, puts a plan together. Pharaoh is so impressed by this plan that he has that he brings him out of jail. He restores him to a position. He is now second in control of the entire country. This guy, this Hebrew slave that came from a shepherding background, is now in the most advanced civilization in the world, second in command. And this is a real historical story. This is a biblical story that you can go read about in other places, in other literature. He's second in command. And sure enough, they start building big bins, and there's lots of rain in the crops, and they start putting it away. They start putting it away because they know there's 7 years coming where it isn't going to be good, and there's a real practical lesson there for you. I don't care what happens to you in life, there's going to be cycles in your life. There's going to be times when things are good, and there's going to be times when things are bad. Whether you go into the ministry, into business, into engineering, into IT, there are ups and downs always in the economy. Put away, store up when things are bad, or when things are good, store up, because nothing ever lasts. That's the practical lesson here. But the story now gets very exciting because the last 8 chapters are all designed to teach one lesson. Jacob's family, once it got to be the famine time, they're starving. They're afraid they're going to die, and so the brothers go to Egypt because they heard there's food there that had been stored up. Well, they end up in front of their brother, but they don't know it's their brother. And he knows it's them. They don't know it's him. And so he puts them through a series of tests. There's a couple journeys back and forth. It involves Benjamin, and he's putting them through a test because he wants to see if their hearts are changed. As it turns out, their hearts have been changed. And they now are thinking about their brother Benjamin instead of themselves, even though they know he was their father's favorite. And Joseph is overjoyed that his brothers have been changed. Their hearts have been changed, and you think about that. They meant him unbelievable evil. They meant him either death or life as a slave. And yet, because of who Joseph was and what he had become, because of what he had become as a man of God, he could forgive. And the forgiveness brought reconciliation, and the reconciliation brought restoration. How many of you are living in a family right now where there's brokenness, where things aren't the way they should be? Joseph is a powerful example. God will help us with restoration if we'll ask him. This is an extreme a situation as there can possibly be. But with God's help and his guidance and his power, there can be restoration in your families. There can be restoration amongst friends. It can happen. It can happen only, though, because God is with us. You know, the thing about Joseph's life that I really like is that it follows the same 4-chapter narrative of the entire Bible. Joseph is created. Now, he wasn't really created. Nothing is created except what God creates out of nothing. But Joseph had a beginning. He had a birth. And the second thing we know about Joseph is that he was broken. There was a fall. There was a creation, a birth, and there was a fall. And the third thing that happened is that there was a change. Because of Joseph's situation, because he was caught in this terrible situation of being separated from his family, scared, going to a foreign land, there was a change. Joseph was redeemed in a sense. And because of that redemption, there could be a transformation. Because of that transformation, there could be a restoration. If you think about the Bible, and a lot of times we read specific passages and we don't think about the entire narrative. But the entire narrative is where the power is. If you go right back to the beginning, to the creation, God created the world. And then he created man in his image. And you are still in God's image. And then what he did was, he created 2 things. He created a garden. He put Adam in the garden and he said, work it. I created this, but it's your job to work it. It's your job to subdue it. It's your job to bring prosperity to it. Then he created Eve. And he said, it's not right that people should live alone. He took Eve and he put Eve in the garden. And so what are the 2 great challenges in life? What are the 2 great opportunities in life? It's work and it's relationships. It's work and love. It's work and relationships. It was that way right from the beginning. Then what happened? Man is not happy. He's not satisfied with being in God's world. He wants his own world. Isn't that where it all goes wrong for all of us? That's where it went wrong for Joseph at the beginning. It wasn't enough. He wanted it his way. He wanted his own world. And so there's a fall. The relationship with God is broken. And then what does God say in Genesis 3? He says it very specifically. Two things are going to happen because of the fall. One, work is going to get hard. Work is going to get frustrating. And two, relationships are going to get hard, and relationships are going to get frustrating. Those are the two great challenges that you're going to have in your life. If you can figure out work and you can figure out relationships, including the relationship with your spouse, your family, other people at work, things will go really well, but those are the challenges. So it's broken. Work is going to get hard. Work is going to get frustrating. All of our work will not be successful. It will not all be productive. We'll have challenges in our relationship, but God is not done with us, and he sends Jesus. And he sends Jesus into the world to lead the perfect life that Adam could not lead, to suffer and to die and to rise again so that there could be restoration. There could be restoration. That's the fourth chapter. It's creation, it's fall, it's redemption, and then it's restoration. If you go to the book of Revelation, it will talk to you about what the restoration is going to be. And this is where a powerful imagination is necessary, because we're still going to be working when we die and go to heaven. But our products are going to work. They're going to be successful. They're going to be fruitful. We're going to have relationships. And the relationships are going to be strong, and they're going to be pure, and they're going to be enjoyable, and they'll be cooperative. That's what heaven's going to be like. What I want you to picture right now is that reality where your work is productive. Every one of your classes you get an A in. It's very easy, and your relationships are all healthy, and everybody's getting along. Think about that, because here's our job. Something's got to happen between now and restoration. And you know what needs to happen? We need to get to work on that powerful imagination, and we need to go into that imagination and drag what's going to be in heaven down to earth. That's our job, to drag what's going to be in heaven down to the earth. That's what we're going to be challenged to do. And you think about this room right now. You think about 11,000 students, and you think about 3,200 faculty and staff, a Christian community that comes together. What could we do if we were all together? We have a 5-point plan at Grand Canyon University that I want to talk to you about just for a couple minutes, and I'd like all of you to get involved in it. The more people that we can get involved in it, the more powerful that we can become. The challenges are great in our world today. There's no doubt. There's brokenness everywhere. But together behind a plan, we could transform this. You know, the west side, if you think about the west side of Phoenix, when these houses were built around here, they were brand new. Middle-class families lived in them. There were thriving businesses throughout this community. Over time, the whole thing has deteriorated, and there's lots of brokenness in this world, in our neighborhood right now. But when you think about what God has done in terms of blessing us, it's not right that we come here every day just for ourselves. We need to make an impact in the world. We need to be the restorers of this world that we live in. We can do that. You're going to hear a lot about STEM education in the next number of years. We're going to start an IT program, a computer science program this year. We're going to start 3 engineering programs next year. Our biology programs are strong, but you're going to hear a lot about that because God said, subdue the earth. Raise up a generation of young Christians who are dynamic engineers and IT specialists and biologists and chemists that can think about the world and how to combine resources in the world and bring them together so everybody prospers. So that everybody prospers. You're going to hear a lot about that in the next couple of years. The second thing is we need to make the neighborhood safe. We're working with a City of Phoenix Police Department, and we're putting money and resources into making this neighborhood safe. And it's not just about getting rid of the bad guys. We are going to get rid of the bad guys, but you have to change the culture of poverty, but you have to also change the culture of crime. And it's going to take programs to do that. Most of the people in this world don't want any part of the criminal activity that goes around. And if we could give them a way to be a part of a solution, they would get involved. And it can be done. It can be done. The third thing we're going to do is we're getting behind all the educational institutions in this area. All the K-12 public schools in this area. And there are some dynamic K-12 schools. Or K-8 schools. We're also getting behind the public high schools. I want to give credit right now to some people that started working 2 years ago, Tacey Ashby and Dr. Joe and Arlene. They started a program with Alhambra High School 2 years ago, and they have a tutor learning center that's on the west side of our campus. It's open between 3 o'clock and 8 o'clock. A lot of you as students are participating in that. 3 years ago, Alhambra was a F school. They were a failing school. 2 years ago, they were a D-rated school. Last year, they were a C-rated school. they're 10 points away from being a B-rated school. They're 10 points away from being a B-rated school at Alhambra High School. That's 2,800 students, 82% Latino, 90% live below the poverty line, and 40 different languages are spoken in that high school. But you know what? Those students are not liabilities, they're assets. And if we get behind them, it's incredible what they can do. They can go to college, they can be engineers, they can be IT specialists, and guess what happens if they do? If they do, their children will go to school, and then you change generations. We're just beginning. Maryvale High School is going to get involved in that program. Borgate High School is going to get involved in that program. We're going to ask more of you as students to take on part-time jobs. They're good part-time jobs to work in that center. But we're going to change people's lives through that activity. The fourth thing is jobs. We are going to look at every job that's going to be created here in the next 2 years, and there will be many. And we're going to work with the local pastors to hire people in the neighborhood. We've already gotten started. We met with the pastors at Love International last week. We've told them we got 5 jobs available in our IT area, and we are looking for them to identify people in their congregation that live in this neighborhood. I don't care if they're not ready to do it. We'll give them training, and we're going to give them a job. And once we've given them a job, we'll give them a chance to go to school. Once we give them a chance to go to school, then their kids will go to school, and then you start changing lives. You start changing generations of lives. Nothing changes permanently in an area unless there are jobs, unless people have a chance to work. And so we're very excited about the job thing. The last thing, the fifth part of that plan that I hope a lot of you will want to get excited about. We're just nearly completed with it. There's a great organization that many of you have worked with. I mean, this is a dynamic, do-good organization, Habitat for Humanity, and they are going to, we are going to work out a tax credit program with all of our employees so donations can be made. We're going to try to raise the first $100,000. When we raise that first $100,000, Habitat is in the process of identifying 70 homes. Those 70 homes, the people have to put a little skin in the game, but then we're going to match and we're going to go out there as an entire community, and we're going to rebuild homes. Our long-term goal is to rebuild 700 homes in this community with roofs and with air conditioning and things like that. There are powerful partners of ours that are going to be a partner. The Phoenix Dream Center, the Christian Clinic. We can do so much more together, but you're a catalyst. I mean, this is the catalyst. Let's look around this room and think that 5 years ago we had chapel in Ethington Theater with 100 people in it. And today we come in here and the arena is filled. It's what God, this is an example of what God can do. One last thing. The greatest witness that you can make is how you go about your work the next 9 months, the next 8 months. When you go about your work with a sincerity and an effort to do the best that you can, to give the best that you can, to not settle for less than you're capable of, if you go to work being not a victim, but a difference maker, if you go to work with a conscientiousness, people will see that. People will respect that. They'll wonder where that comes from. And then you'll have a chance to tell them about the gospel and about why you work so hard at your studies, why you want to do well, why you are not going to settle for less than you're capable of, because it's God that has given you this opportunity. Thank you again for choosing Grand Canyon University. Thank you for being here. If you're a freshman, how many freshmen are in here? There's a lot of you. If you would go back and just dream a little bit about what this thing is going to look like 4 years from now in this neighborhood, you can help us. And with that, I would like to introduce the lead singer and face of the most successful Christian band in the history of Christian bands, who's going to lead us in prayer. Please welcome from Mercy Me, Bart Millard.
I'm ready to sign up. I'm just here to close us in prayer. I guess I'm kind of a freshman too. I'm the director of the new Center for Worship Arts here, and So shout out to our first ever freshman class of that center, wherever you guys are. Pressure's on. Well, let's pray. Father God, I remember when I was a kid in Vacation Bible School, we would sing the song, "They will know we are Christians by our love." God, what if this campus, what if this university started changing things? What if a voluntary chapel was actually full? What if you showed up, God? What if lives started changing forever? What if students in the most pivotal time of their lives started understanding who they are in Christ? What if we started changing the community for the kingdom? What if revival took place? What if the rest of the world started looking in? And people started asking, where did this all start? Where did this all happen? And we'll say at Grand Canyon University. God, I pray that your hand is all over this, and that everything that we do puts a smile on your face 10 miles wide. And God, I'm just excited and hanging on for the ride and anticipating what's going to happen next. And we lay all this at your feet and pray it in your most holy and precious name. Amen. You guys are dismissed. Have a great day.
Got to live right, just stay in line. You've heard it on at least 1,000,000 times. And like me, you believed it.